Hello and welcome to the I Am Evolution podcast. Spirit guide and soul sage Raina shares the knowledge of the universe to awaken and raise consciousness within. All of us have forgotten who we are and why we are here. But if we open our minds to new knowledge, we can use duality to achieve different perspectives to regain our unity. When we expand our awareness within, our possibilities become limitless. Let's begin to remember who we truly are and fulfill our mission and purpose to become conscious. And now, let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the I Am Evolution podcast. I'm your host, Raina, and I want to welcome you to tonight's show. I am so glad to be back. We have been off for a couple of weeks, and I have a lot to tell you. Why? Because if you are following our social media, you guys will know that we went to Albuquerque last week, and I got to tell you, we just had such an amazing time. It was such an amazing time. We ended up meeting two people that were like soul family, which is very rare. It was just such a magical trip. It's just hard to put into words. I put tons of pictures on my personal social media, but on the I Am Evolution page, I put a bunch of pictures as well. But we went there because we had to open up a portal, and with these two people that we actually met, who are now part of our soul family, Mike and Liliana. First of all, let me say thank you to both of them. Thank you so much for everything you guys did. You guys, from the moment we arrived, you guys welcomed us into your family and into your home, and it showed us around all of Albuquerque, showed us all the special places, and just made it so much of a magical trip that I'm still giddy over it. I really am. I keep looking at the pictures like I just won the lottery, you know. But it was just such a magical moment. But we opened up a portal over there. I was able to open up Mike and Liliana's heart portal. That was always nice, and gather some new information and just the receptivity. And we just had such a special moment. At the end of the second part of opening up the portal, me, Caleb, Mike, and Liliana, we were sitting in the trees area where we were doing it. And in the last moment when I finished up, all of a sudden you just felt this energy shift, and you could hear, we're like 10,000 feet up in the air in the trees and everything, and you just felt this wind coming, and you could actually feel and see this chunk of wind. It was like, because all the wind was blowing like west to east, and so when all of a sudden it just stopped, and this new chunk of wind just came in, swirled around us, and then took off the opposite way, like a completely different way. And we were like, wow. And it was just a confirmation of everything that was going on. And it was just so amazing. And then on our way back, we ended up with COVID. It was just the most amazing thing. Luckily, we had a dosage of ivermectin. Ivermectin works very well for COVID. I've got it twice. I flew twice in 2 years, and twice I've got COVID. And the ivermectin killed it right away. So it wasn't too bad, but I was sick for about a week before I realized it was COVID. Like 4 days later, all of a sudden I lost my taste, and I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So it wasn't too bad, but you know how it goes. You come on a great trip, and all of a sudden then you end up getting sick. But it was just such a fun time. So anyways, guys, let's get into tonight's show, because I know we only got like 35 minutes. I might go a little over on this show. I might go into 45 minutes today. We're going to see how it goes. But anyways, guys, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, DLive, and our replay. The links are always in our Facebook, social media, and the events. So if you're not part of our Facebook page, the I Am Evolution podcast page, please go there and sign up, and then you will get notifications for the events and all the links to all the replays and everything. Plus, you can always visit our website, soulandspiritguide.com. So tonight's show is something that I really wanted to talk about again. This is an old show. This is something that I want to touch on again, because this is something like, if a lot of my students I put through this type of work. This is the type of work that I deal with and I work with all the time. And this title is called "In the Shadows of Obsidian," and this is all about shadow work, because shadow work is something that a lot of us talk about, especially in the spiritual community or the conscious community or whatever. And we're always talking about, you always hear this work, and I see on social media all the time, people are always talking, what is shadow work? How do I do it? How do I get through? And what struck me to do this again was the fact that when I see people ask, what is shadow work? And then I see the comments, it really kind of, I don't want to say baffles me, but it really kind of shows me where people have the miscommunication and the misunderstanding of what actually shadow work is, because they always make it is tough. I'm not gonna be dishonest with you guys. I'm gonna be honest. It is tough work. It is very hard, strenuous work, and that. But just some of the answers I see all the time, and just the way people put it, I think it just sounds like I don't know. It just puts a really harshness to it, and it is tough. And I'm not gonna lie to you, but if you're one of those that are constantly struggling with maybe your emotions, your unresolved issues, your challenges in life, maybe you're constantly repeating the same issues, and you've gone to these healers, and you've gone to therapy, and you've gone to all these different things, and you really can't figure out what's going on. Why am I still stuck here? Because there's a lot of people that'll go to therapy and they'll listen to you chat for a while, and we've all been there, right? I mean, I've been to therapy. I go to therapy once. I haven't been in a while, but I go. I think it's very healthy, because even the people who help people need someone to talk to and get ideas out, and just be able to talk to somebody sometimes and vent your stuff, because it does become overwhelming at times. And it's just very healthy. But many of us walk around struggling with our unresolved emotions, our unresolved challenges, our unresolved issues, our past issues, the stress of the future, all these different things. And we don't have any awareness of what it is that's actually going on. And this is why a lot of us, and I hear comments all the time about how life sucks and I'm never coming back here. And honestly, we get that type of person. We become that type of personality because we think that there's no way to get out of who we are or the things that are always causing us the most pain and suffering. But the funny thing is we have that ability. One of the things that we must realize, and I really want you guys to understand this, is that you have the power to change whatever it is you want to do. And I'm going to make a comment here, and I just want you to, and I'm just being honest with you. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be hurtful or anything like that. But if you're suffering and you continue to suffer and you choose not to get help, well, unfortunately, that's your fault. And we have to learn to take responsibility for that, because if we're suffering, it's because we're choosing to suffer. And I know a lot of you are going to be like, well, no, you don't understand, Raina. I'm really trying to work on myself, but I just can't get past things. Well, that's because maybe either you haven't been taught to do certain things, maybe you don't have the proper tools, or the fact that maybe you're not really trying in a certain area and you're not really willing to let it go. I know so many people, no matter how many times I even students of mine, past students of mine that I've had to let go, that I get them to a point and they're just unwilling to face something because it's too scary, it's too frightening. And, and I'm not going to go into my past, because if you guys have been watching this show for a long time, for the past 10 years, then you guys know my past and all the stuff that I've went through and all the abuse and everything so I get it. But at the same time, that's the excuse. If you use the idea of fear, see, the mind wants the control. And when we have unresolved emotions, when we have when these root causes evade our awareness of what's really going on, it's because something in our mind is telling us that's too scary for us to face. And so we become a constant struggle, and we become that idea of, people will sit there and say, well, well, you're attracting this. Well, it's not that you're attracting it, it's you're reflecting who you are. So you have to remember that everything in your life is a reflection of who you really are and what you're really going through. So as I always say, angry people always see anger. Victims always see injustice, and it goes down the road like that. But when we are constantly running into that brick wall, when we're constantly running into that brick wall of emotions or the same problem over and over, and the frustration towards the past builds, and you're just like ready to pull out your hair and you just don't know what else to do, it's because you've allowed yourself to get to the point of confusion. You have to remember that in the brain, once you become emotional, your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for like rational thinking and problem solving and all these different things, and that shuts down, and you can no longer think rationally. So of course, when you're emotional, it's hard for you to see what's right in front of you because of these ideas. Because the moment you're emotional, your body says there's fight or flight. I have to choose flight right now, or fight, because I can't sit around and problem think about this because this is a stressor to me. And then we go down in our emotions and we snowball and we self-destruct and everything. I watch so many people with anger, frustration, jealousy, hate consume themselves because of something that happened. The other day I was playing pool. Caleb and I joined a pool league the other last week, and I actually won one of my matches. And I only had one match, but I won it. And I've been practicing for a while, and I watched that. Like sometimes I get to hang out with people at the places that I'm practicing at. And I watch how they self-destruct. Like one day they're really happy and they're all over the place, and then the next time I see them, they're like sitting on a chair, miserable, pouting and fuming in their things. And there's this one person that comes in and it's the end of the world with all their problems all the time, and they're always angry, they're always frustrated, and then they go reach out to the person constantly on their cell phone and like constantly text the person that's causing all the problems, and it's like well, we're doing this to ourselves. And the fact of shadow work allows us to see things that we're doing. It allows us to reflect on what it is that we're actually doing. So our decisions, our social interactions with people, the way we perceive life and ourselves, because you have to remember now that when we are becoming aware, because that's what consciousness is, right? It's becoming aware of who we are. And so this idea of consciousness, well, I'm becoming conscious, so I'm becoming aware. So now I have to be reflective, and I have to be aware of everything that I decide, my social interactions with people, how I'm perceiving life, what I'm thinking about myself. And how I perceive life, like I said, is a reflection of how I perceive myself. And that is the only thing it is. I've never met someone that sits there and says, well, I love myself, and life just sucks and everybody sucks. They don't have that personality. They see things for what it is, but it's a difference. The people that are self-destructive and are going that way are the ones that see that, because that's what they see about themselves. They don't feel that there's anything worthy of themselves, and therefore they don't see anything worthy in their life. So when people talk to me about shadow work, it's one of the things that we have to start looking at, because it doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, what sexuality you are, because deep down we're all humans. We all bleed the same way. Our bodies all function the same way. We are all human. And so there's all pain, there's all suffering, there's all fear, doubt, judgment, hate, etc. The list goes on. And this is where we have to be able to say, okay, well, what's going to separate me? If I'm truly growing in consciousness, well, I have to resolve my ego, right? Because that's one of the biggest things. But resolving our ego doesn't mean getting rid of the ego, because there's a very healthy side to the ego, first of all, that we want to grow. And then the other side, the destructive side, well, we don't have to get rid of that, because we just have to learn to work with it and transform it into understanding. Because remember, during shadow work, it's not about getting rid of things. Like out of all my experiences that I've ever experienced in my life, I haven't got rid of a single thing. I can pull any memory of any time, of anything that happened to me at will, and just be like, okay, this is the situation and I need to pull it because this situation kind of reminds me of this, and I learned this from this lesson. Can I implement it in here? And shadow work, it just isn't for the times when we're suffering pain and all this stuff. It's a constant way of living, because in our shadows, because the word shadow, maybe the word shadow is off-putting to some people, and we think, ooh, shadows, it's scary, but shadow work is a constant everyday lifestyle. It's a constant work, and it's not. And yes, there are times where, like I say, when they first did this show, we put ourselves in the chamber of Obsidian, and we have at it. We go round and round with ourself and our ego, and we're boxing each other and kicking the poop out of each other. And, and then there's other days where, there's times where I'm just reflecting on things, and I'm just saying, okay, well, this happened today. How did I handle this? How was I, what way was I perceiving this? Was I seeing it for what it actually was? Was I judging? Was I doing these things? And that's when we have to start learning to understand, and become reflective of what we are. Because, if we're going to continue, if you're going to continue to run into that wall, then it's because we are refusing whatever it is we need to do. So my first question to you before we get into everything is, it's probably fear, but what is it that's stopping you? What is it that's holding you back? And you have to be honest with yourself in that aspect, because a lot of people are afraid. A lot of people are afraid, well, it's going to hurt again. Well, yeah, it is. As long as you hold on to that idea and you become victimized by that idea and you give that idea power, well, then it's always going to hurt. I could sit back and think right now of the times that I was abused, and it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me one bit. And why doesn't it bother me? Because it has no power with me anymore. I could think of times that I was hurt by somebody, cheated on somebody, they cheated on me with somebody, and it doesn't bother me anymore. Why? Because those type of things don't have power anymore, because those are just ideas. And once you start doing shadow work, it breaks away from the construct that is real. Because yes, our experiences are real, but as I said before, our emotions aren't. Our emotions are here to guide us, to show us, well, once we start to buy into something, once we start to believe that it's true when it's not, or once we start to give something power that's false, then we create this thing called emotion. And this is why so many people suffer. And that's why, people hate it when I say, well, if you're suffering, it's your fault. Because you first of all, if you give yourself, well, I don't have the money. Well, there's free shows. I'm doing a free show for you every other week, and there's 200 episodes. Just take the time. There's free shows right there. So you don't have to worry about money. And there's lots of people that do stuff like this. And that, well, there's other things. People are willing to work with people that have low incomes, etc. There's free programs out there. There's so many ways you could read, you could study. There's all these different things. But the most important thing that you have to realize is that it's not out there. And this is and honestly, this is one of the best things that I love about shadow work, is it teaches you that it's not out here. And I'm pointing to my computers right here. It's not out here on the computers. It's not out here in the universe and everything else. It's not out there. It's here. You already have it. You have all the information of the universe stored in every single cell all over your body, and you can access it at any time you want. That's the only thing that makes people wise or enlightened. And I'm using my air quotes for those of you that are listening to the replays, the radio version of this, and that because what I mean about wise and enlightened, that it's just words. But people that are considered wise and people that are considered enlightened have realized that, one, what we call God, universe, source, and 2, that they have all the information that they need and they can access it inside their body at any time, because all the cells and all the vibrations and all the other, so everything that you're made up of, the consciousness that you're made up already stores this. And that's the difference between the awake people or conscious people and the unconscious people, because the unconscious people will constantly seek out a God or a universe, or need to pray or need to chant all this thing because they haven't realized, they haven't evolved yet, and there's nothing wrong with it yet. But at their point in their evolution, they haven't evolved to the point where they realize, oh my God, I don't have to pray. I don't have to believe in a God. I don't have to do these things. I am it, and I'm the source, and I'm the information, and I'm all the data of the universe. And it takes us so many lives to do that. And the unconscious people will also fight and scream and succumb over that. They think that they're helpless. They believe that they need somebody else like me or somebody else to teach them all the knowledge of the universe, because you're wise and you know everything. It's like no. It's like the only difference between people who, teach and the people who are evolving is that we recognize the information in ourselves. We recognize who we are. And that doesn't mean we know everything. That doesn't mean we don't struggle, because, hey, I'm in a human body, and you guys know this. I have struggles. I have my moods. I have things I go through. There's experiences I have that I have to work through and everything like that. But I know that I have the greatest library of information right here in this body. And, you may judge it. You may laugh at the way I sound. You may laugh at the way I look. You may look at me on the computer and YouTube and turn me off after a couple minutes because I'm not some hot chick or something like that, or even a guy that's talking or whatever. And you may not like the way I look or whatever. But I recognize that this is powerful, that this is information. And so when I do my shadow work, I don't need to read a book. I don't need to see a healer. I don't need to see the other people, because I have all the information that I need. And so that is the understanding that we have to start parting with. If you want to start getting past these constant repeats of these challenges and these things that you're holding on to, then start recognizing who you are. Start recognizing self, and not in an egotistical way, because remember, you don't use spirituality or consciousness as a mask for your ego, as self-righteousness to be better than anybody. When you're growing in consciousness, you see yourself in everybody else and say, you know what? That's me. And that was me at one point. And so I'm going to have compassion for that, because even though I'm not going through that anymore, that reminds me of something. I remember there. So let's help one another out, because now through shadow work, through what I was doing, I can truly understand what it is what I need to do. So excuse me. So when we start to enter the shadow, and I love, and I'm going to tell you that while I work with shadows, I always work with the Obsidian stone. If you're not familiar with crystals or anything like that, then you have to, Obsidian is this black, dark crystal, and I love it. I have it all over my house. I have it in orb form. I have it in spear form, just every type of form that you could possibly have. I have obsidian everywhere. And even a lot of my necklaces and rings and everything that I wear and bracelets have obsidian. And you're going to ask myself, well, why do I work with obsidian? Because obsidian is the work that I do is the brutally honest type of work. It shows you. Remember that our shadow work, what we call shadow work, is really learning to understand the wholeness of the duality spectrum of the positive masculine aspect and the negative feminine aspect. Because remember, the positive aspect of our lives are where we go out and do our things and try to act our goals out and do all that stuff. And the negative aspect of our lives is reflection and understanding and rest and nurturing and everything like that. And those two things have to form each other to create a circle, to create a whole. And so when we work with obsidian purposely tells us to understand that. Like, it forces us to work in the masculine and feminine energy. And the ancient Egyptians, if you ever study ancient Egyptians and like the Egyptian culture, then you will see all over the place that they had a plethora of obsidian. And actually, the god Anubis, which is the guardian of the underground, that was the stone that was associated with Anubis. And so this meant like they didn't view like the underworld as the way like we view hell, like, or Christians or Catholics view hell. It wasn't like that. But what the Anubis did and the obsidian stone does is it forces you to look at yourself. It says, okay, look, the only reason why we're here is to learn, to grow. And we have life after life after life. And when you get to a certain point, the training wheels come off and you have to learn to ride your bike on your own without any parental help, without anybody help. And once you start to learn to ride your bike, then you could do tricks once in a while, and then you could do ramps, and you could go and as it's a progression, and that's how life is. So now you're starting to work with obsidian, you're starting to see shadows, you're starting to be forced, because when you start to work with this energy, it starts off and it just says, okay, well, this is the stuff you have to work at, and bam, it shoves it in your face and says, that's what you need to work at. And it's not going to go away until you work with it. And there's a chamber that I love to work with, and it's called the Chamber of Obsidian. And obviously, it's a chamber made of obsidian, working with the shadows, working with that type of energy, because it's all made out of obsidian. It's beautiful, by the way. And when I go in it, I can go in it for weeks, I can go in it for months, I can go in it for years, I can go in it for a day, whatever I need, until I face that challenge, and until I'm able to do that. So in short, it's a ruthlessly honest place, but it's of raw love and healing. So I don't recommend it for everybody. I don't, especially with shadow work. If you're one of those that are, that want to, that kind of want, like when you work with shadow work and you work with the obsidian energy, you have to be like a 10 out of 10 or higher, like a 12 or 15 out of 10 on the ready to change. Like, yes, I'm going to do it. I want to do it now. You can't be like a 6 or lower on like the ready to change scale and be like, well, I do kind of want it, but I'm afraid. I'm too afraid of change. I'm too afraid of this. I don't want to cry anymore. I don't want to, it's too scary if that's the mindset, this is definitely not for you. But eventually throughout your life, you're going to have to learn to face things, because the more you tell yourself that you're afraid of something, the scarier it becomes. It's kind of the reason why, like, when I had a fear of heights and I was claustrophobic, what did I do? I jumped up in a small little plane as it was going 18,000 feet, and then I jumped out skydiving, because getting cramped in a plane with a bunch of other skydivers and then jumping out and falling, and that took care of too. And I kept doing it, and still because you have to learn that whatever it is that's afraid of you is just psychosomatic, and it's playing games with you. Your mind is playing games, the reason why this is. And it always has to do with a fear of death. Now, there's nothing wrong with fearing death, but that shows that when we fear death, that we don't understand life, we don't understand, and unfortunately, we're all going to face it. But when we start to accept these things, well, okay, yeah, one of these days I'm going to transition back home, because you've done it before. This isn't your first rodeo, and so that means you've died before and you've come back, and so, hey, where have you gone? No place. You haven't gone anywhere, so, like, you've already been through this, so, like, you have to start remembering why. And that's really what shadow work is it's facing the death of these situations, because you guys have to remember that everything that you attach yourself to becomes your identity, and it becomes your identity of saying, well, this gets me sympathy, this gets me attention, this gets me the love this gets me hugs. When I'm feeling down, I'm just gonna like get really sad and bring up old memories, and people will say, oh, I'm so sorry, and give you a hug. First of all, and I'm gonna give this point of advice: if someone's ever crying when someone's ever sad about something, don't hug them. And the reason why I say don't hug them is because that's reinforcing them to constantly be that victim, constantly be saying, okay, well, if I act this way, I'm gonna get this. And it's kind of like a screaming child, like when a child wants something, if a parent gives in to the screaming child, it's gonna keep screaming every time it wants something because because that's that it realizes. So we have to realize that everything we're going through, every experience, we've created a life of its own where we've created this identity for it. And part of the shadow work, being ruthlessly honest but of raw love and healing, it has to become profound in the sense that it says, well, you know what? I've created this identity for myself because we all have. For years, I created the identity. Well, I was abused. I used to say that all the time. Well, you know what? I was abused and bullied my whole life. I was abused and bullied and you know what? Yeah, I was. But once I realized that I was constantly saying it because it was becoming my identity for people, because I thought, well, if I don't say this stuff, people aren't going to understand the reason why I am the way I am. But what it was doing was it kept the snowball rolling down the hill, and it kept adding fuel to the fire of me being the victim in that sense. Well, okay, so yeah, I was abused. Yeah, I was these things. But now it doesn't hold meaning to me because, that's gone. That's over in my past. And that stuff doesn't have to. So I had to let it die. I had to kill the idea in just the past and smash it. But I had to face it. And and that's the beauty of this, of working with that obsidian type of energy and working with that feminine aspect of the shadow of reflection, is because if you're suffering in something and you're not willing to face it, then that will be who you are for the rest of your life. And so if you want to suffer, then you're going to continue to suffer. And I know there's always going to be people that are going to write in and say, Raina, you're wrong. I don't want to suffer. I truly try to work on myself and I can't get over it. Well, and I'm going to tell you one or two things. Either one, you don't have the correct tools, or you're not really trying on the issue at hand, and you don't really want to give it up. And it's very it's very tricky because a lot of people will say that they really want to give something up, but they really don't. I've been doing this since I was like 7-8 years old, and let me tell you, 9 out of 10 people don't want to give up their stuff, and they'll say, oh yeah, I want. And the moment you tell them that they have to take responsibility for it, or it's their fault, or they're the ones that they go running for the hills, and you never hear from them again. Because they don't want to deal with it. They want to continue to say, it's your fault, you're the one who's doing it, I didn't do it, I'm blaming you, and I'm going to be mad at you. Well, I could blame my father for things, and only see things one-sided. I can blame the people who beat me up all the time and jumped me and kicked my butt all over the place and stole up from me and cheated on me and manipulated me and do all this. I could blame every person in the world, but I choose not to, because in my shadow work and the obsidian work, it says, hey, I have to take responsibility. Yes, those things did happen. And yes, the responsibility is I allowed some things to happen because, you know what? I wanted friends at the time, or I was lonely and I wanted to date somebody, or whatever the reason was. And so I excused certain behaviors. I saw the red flags, but I excused it. And I had to take responsibility for it. And so I said, you know what? One of the things that I'm going to do is people around me now are going to and I have standards now. And I have hard standards. But I am a little, I do have, what is it? I do have where I bend and that, but there are still certain things like honesty, loyalty, people who don't play games with me. There are certain things that I want. I want people that are like friends that are going to be around me now, that want to be around me, that I'm not always chasing them down, because that was one of my things back in the day, is I always chased those people. I was always like, hey, I was always making the effort. And part of my shadow shadow work was like, why am I so mad? Like, why do I feel like I don't ever have any friends? Why don't I feel like I'm not good enough with friends? Well, because I always had friends around that never valued me. And so now part of valuing myself is saying, okay, well, I'm going to have friends now that I make sure that they value me by making an effort. And if they don't make an effort for me, that's fine. I'm not going to get mad because it's not about me, it's about them. And this is how shadow work works, is it's a constant seeing yourself in value and understanding the responsibility that you have to take. If you're going to stay in a relationship because you'd rather be with somebody than nobody alone, or that nobody because you're afraid to be alone, well, then you made the choice, you made the consequences, and you're going to suffer with whatever consequences as is. And I know many people. I have a family member that stays in a dead end relationship, and this person would rather be with somebody than be alone, and it's a terrible relationship, very unhappy, and it's like, why do you guys stay together? But you know what? Honestly, it's not for me to judge. If that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. But they have to accept the consequences of being in a loveless relationship and being unhappy and never having people, or the two people never being able to live up to the expectations of the other. And what kind of life is that? So this is why it is important for us to understand what shadow work is and really go after it, because it brings out all the hidden ideas. It brings out all the things that we may not want to face, that we may not want to see for ourselves. But the only way we're going to get past it is to see it. I mean, if you want to lose weight and you don't want to change your eating style or go to the gym or exercise or anything, are you going to lose weight? No. If you want to, get off alcohol or whatever, or start learning to save, or, if you want to become something in school, you have to have an education. But if you're not willing to go through the education to get the diploma, to get the job, well, then you're never going to achieve it, right? So it's the same thing. And it baffles me why people are so like, okay, I need a job, I need to make money, I need to do this, but they don't feel that they don't need to work on themselves. And it's sad, really. It really is. And so I don't know. Maybe you were one of them. Maybe not. But to me, like, working on myself is a 24-hour job. Of course, I have fun, and there's many moments that I don't think about anything. I'm out going, having a good time, and just being in the moment, and that. But other times, like, I'm always working on myself. I'm always trying to grow, evolve. I'm always trying to see. I mean, even after this show, I'm going to, with my mind, I'm going to go over this whole show, everything that I said, and just kind of, and then use it to be reflective about myself and say, well, we were talking about shadow work. Is there anything that I'm missing in my life? Is there anything that I need to look at? Is there what's going on? And that's the wonderful thing, because it brings out all the hidden stuff. There was even a thing with I had an issue a while ago with a gaming community. After the ayahuasca, a lot of that was dead, gone. It was like I didn't feel it anymore. But there was a point a couple weeks ago where I was just doing something, and something triggered a memory, and man, I just got all upset again, and I was like, I guess I gotta do some shadow work. It brought out a hidden pain. It brought out an old wound that was still, it was 95% healed, but there was still a little point that was still like, ooh, got me. And I became angry again, and I was like, remember, and I said, okay, so there's still stuff in the tank there. So now what I had to do was I had to sit down, I had to sit with my energy and say, okay, well, why am I mad? Well, yes, and it always came, what heals me in shadow work, and maybe this will help you guys, is that I always remember who I am. I'm not perfect. I have my temper. That's one of the things I always work. I'm always working on. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. I know what I know, and I'm always trying to grow. But I do know that I'm very caring. I put in 110% in everything I do. And so when I look at when I use this idea as the gaming community, what kind of helped heal up the rest of that wound was that I was like, well, Raina, you know what? Maybe there are some things that you didn't see but let's go over it. And I sat and I went over everything, and I realized I was there for everybody, and I gave my all. And everybody that had a problem, out of the 100 and something people that were in our squad, I sat there and I listened to even people in other squads. I became a judge in a community twice because I wanted to help people with their issues and problems. And so I sat and I was there, and I made the game nights all the time, and I tried to make it fun, and I picked up for people when they were, and I sat back and I said, you know what, there might be some things I may miss and stuff, but 99% I go, you know what, I was there for people, and you know what, if they can't see that, then that's their loss. And in that moment of shadow work, I said, you know what, I don't need this anymore. I don't need to hold on to this anymore, because you know what, I did what I wouldn't change anything. If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change anything, because I gave my all. And even though it bit me in the butt later, and there was a lot of backstabbing and turning on there, I go, you know what, even the people that turned their back on me, I was there for them. I was there for their problems and their challenges. And I go, and if they had an issue with me for whatever reason, then that's their problem, not mine. And that's what shadow work really does, is it allows you to see, like, and when there's faults of mine, when there are situations, I'm just like, Raina, you were a jerk in that situation, and you need to work on that. You need to resolve it. And I will go to people and say, look, I'm sorry. I was very rude to you. But in this situation, you know what? I gave my all, and I wouldn't change it. And when you are that's what the Obsidian energy and the shadow work, the feminine aspect does. Because when you realize who you are and you're given 110%, you're doing your things, then there's no hang-ups. But when you're acting up and you're doing certain things and you're having attitude and stuff, it shows you and it says, hey, we need an adjustment. If you want to call yourself conscious, if you want to have this idea of being this person, that doesn't mean you're perfect. But what it means is, because conscious people aren't perfect. They're not enlightened to the point like, oh, I never do anything wrong. What it means is they allow themselves to be human in this experience. And when things come up, they look at themselves and they try to grow with it, and they see and they say, you know what, before I point the finger at anybody, I'm not even going to do that. Let's take a look at myself. And that's the magic of everything that it is, because it's not about belief systems anymore, people. It's not about that. And I know we're at 40 minutes right here. I'm going to cut the show right in a couple minutes, because I was supposed to put in a commercial and everything, but I don't know. I'm enjoying talking to you guys. But it's not about belief systems. It's not about who's right or wrong, good or bad, positive, all my no-nos. It's not about whose life is going to be, who has more knowledge. It's not about that. Shadow work is for people who truly want to evolve, who truly are willing to let it all die, to let all their belief systems go and say, you know what, I have to grow. If I truly want to become a person of love and compassion and understanding, I really want to be this thing called conscious. If I really want to find the God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, in me, that's not just in me, but I am God, I am universe, I am source. There is no separation, and that power that comes with it, then the shadow work is where you want to go. So if you're struggling with this, you have to get to a point where you really want to let it go. If you're not at that point, you're going to find excuses. Well, I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I'm tired. I was going to, but I didn't do it. There's always some type of excuse. Those are people that are not ready for change. People who are ready for change do it. We do it at any time and point. I could be playing pool. I'm practicing pool, and I'm thinking about something that's going on in my life that I need to work through. So there's always a time and place. All right, everybody, that is today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, shadow work is just, you guys got to do it. It really is. You guys just got to buckle down and do it. And yes, sometimes it is painful letting that stuff out, but I promise you, once it's out, it's not going to be scary or painful anymore. I promise you that, because I've gone through it. I've experienced it. I've experienced some really messed up things in my life. There is a lot of things that have happened in my life that I haven't told you guys, that is very private to me, and a lot of scary situations. And none of it is fearful to me anymore or painful to me anymore, because it doesn't have power anymore, because it's resolved. And you can have that too if you just do some shadow work. So, all right, guys, as always, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you found value in today's show, please share it with people. The only way we're going to help other people and grow is through you guys. I love you guys. I really do. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate all of you people who listen to the show. If you guys are new to the show and you want to follow us on our Facebook, follow us there at I Am Evolution Podcast. Our YouTube is youtube.com/@ I Am Evolution. Our TikTok is I Am Evolution 33. Visit my website, soulandspiritguide.com, and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll receive special VIP access to hidden shows like Sessions. If you guys aren't familiar with Sessions, you're going to love Sessions. They're 20-minute shows every Saturday that sometimes play on the show that on Tuesday, but a lot of times it's brand new topics and stuff, and just fun topics and more information. Just another way for you guys to get free help. And plus, when we have special guests, if they have anything to give, you'll get VIP access to those gifts. Our newsletter has the secret codes every week for those accesses. And always remember to believe in yourself. It's not our abilities and talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.